Well, welcome back to another episode of How I Franchise This. I am incredibly excited to be joined by former NFL player for the Green Bay Packers, and I think a couple of other teams, as well as huge advocate for athletes in business and other programs, and former franchisee, current franchisee, all of the above. Terrence Murphy, I want to turn it over to you to introduce yourself and share some of the brands that you're currently involved with.
Yeah, appreciate that, Alex. Yeah, just one NFL team. So played for the Green Bay Packers. And then it's crazy. I only played one high school, one college, and now with NIL is people have 5 different colleges on their resume. So one high school, Tyler Chapel Hill, one college, Texas A&M, and then Green Bay Packers. So, but yeah, man. So yeah, I'm here back in Texas, and CEO Terrence Murphy Companies, and we're up to 112 companies in our Terrence Murphy Companies portfolio. So between the ones we started, acquired, or invested in, we built a pretty considerable portfolio, and it's been a ride. So franchises, as far as what we are currently franchising, is Crumbl is our number one franchise that we've been really involved with. I mean, we're multi-unit franchisee. F45 is a franchise that we're actively involved with. And then on the tenant side, we have a lot of different franchises like Orange Theory, um, Buffalo Wild Wings, Starbucks, AT&T, Pacific Dental, just on the real estate side. So we deal with the franchises on that side too. Not as franchisees, but as dealing with the operators or corporate, leases.
So, I mean, you've built this huge, portfolio up across real estate, construction, and franchising. And how did you land on franchising as one of those pillars, for your business?
Once I retired from the NFL, I was 22, 23 years old, trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. And I had a little bit of seed capital. I didn't really make crazy, like big NFL money because I got injured my rookie year. But, I made it. It was a dream I set at 5 years old. 17 years later, I achieved it. So it's always something I'm proud of. I was in the Aaron Rodgers draft class. So A-Rod was our first pick. I was the second pick, me and Nick Collins. But as I transitioned out of the NFL, I was just looking for a passion. And so I started reading. I read about 40 books in 16 months and just dived into just information load. And I wasn't even an avid reader, but I realized in order to go and be an entrepreneur and be this kind of startup person or just go out and execute something, I needed the information. So I just prayed to God for that passion. And so I started studying. So real estate was one of the ones that jumped out. Franchising was one. Construction was one. Ranching. I also have a ranching company, Blackwood Ranch. So I'm really diverse as far as my thought process and how I do certain things. I think where people get a little confused is they think I did it all in like a couple years. I've been doing this now for 20 years. I'm, now 42 years old. So, I didn't just jump out and do a million things. I would go and double down on one sector and one category, scale it, grow it, get it going, and then I would jump to the next.
Which one did you do first? I think that's a really good point too. Sometimes people see, success and they think, oh, this was an overnight success, and they don't realize it was a 20-year overnight success. Which category did, jumped out at you first? You're reading all these books, you're educating yourself. Which thing was like, this is the thing first? And if it wasn't franchising, how did you parlay that first thing eventually into franchising?
Yeah, it was real estate. Just being able, at that time, the Great Recession was starting. That was a new experience for a lot of us college grads coming out in the early mid 2000s. And I said, man, look, if I can buy something that is tangible, the stock market was plummeting, gold prices were plummeting, just, commodities were plummeting. And I just doubled down on real estate. It was something that I was like, all right, I can see where my money is invested. I can touch it. And so over time, as I started growing a real estate portfolio, I started TM5, which was a startup company, and we scaled it to 1.5 billion in sales in less than 8 years. So we got an offer from Berkshire Hathaway to merge our company or acquire our company or roll it into their arm. Warren Buffett at the time was really wanting to move into real estate services, and we were one of the independent brokerages that they reached out to. So that kind of introduced me in M&A and venture capital. And then ultimately I said, well, heck, what would it look like to start franchising? Because as I was doing these startup companies, every system, every process, every procedure we had to build from scratch. And it was an absolute grind. It was me and my wife. We were early, 23, 24 years old. And as we're building these companies, we said, man, what would it look like to scale businesses and not have to do everything? That's how we got into commercial real estate, because our residential portfolio was new construction. So we do horizontal, vertical construction, student housing. And we said, what can we buy that's already done? So we started buying Starbucks, Buffalo Wild Wings, AT&Ts from developers with corporate-backed leases. That thought process of doing real estate, but having a different, I call it velocity of income, is the same thought process around franchising. Like, how can we get into something that the systems are already there? The opportunity to scale it and grow it is already there, and it's a proven model.
So that's how, I mean, it makes complete sense. Like, as you think about some of the parallels with real estate and franchising, like you said, there's a playbook, there's systems. So you start to identify franchising. How did you know, which brands to start with? I mean, walk me through kind of your thought process there. Once you and your wife decide, all right, franchising is something we want to explore, then what? I mean, was it reading more books? Was it reaching out to folks in the industry to learn more from them? Was it brands you just were customers of and enjoyed and wanted to reach out to? Or how did you identify the right concept? Because there's 4,000 of them.
Yeah, there's a lot. One of the things that we try to do, and it's my kind of personal thing I try to do, is finding emerging opportunities. Back in 2006, when I was like 22 years old, I was trying to get any and everybody that would listen to me to do a Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A was like emerging, opportunity back in 2005, 2006. And you could get one for $6,000, right? And so I was trying to get teammates to do it. I was trying to get family members to do it, to go through the whole training process, work in the store. And I was like, I'll give you the $6,000. Just go get it. And so that was like one of those, like, finding those emerging opportunities before they actually become Chick-fil-A that it is today. And so what I'm always looking for is, you have the McDonald's, you have the Chick-fil-A's, you have these kind of like pillar franchise brands. But then what are those emerging brands that are starting to scale and grow, but still have runway? But they're not early on to where you invest in them and they flop. So that's that balance of being too early, but being early enough where you get to ride that wave.
Okay, so you were looking for something early. Chick-fil-A was, on your radar. What other ones, I guess, jumped out? What was the first brand you eventually invested in and became a franchisee of?
Yeah, like a GameStop type, like video game franchise. We ultimately sold it and closed it down. It didn't pan out, but I learned a lot from that experience. And then, when we started looking at Crumbl, it's just so much upside there with where it's headed, where it's going. And people would say, well, you're a football player in real estate that runs cattle. Why would you own a cookie store? So for me, it's like, I look at brand awareness. Like, you think about the two programs that I played for. Texas A&M is just it's a storied university. It's a storied football franchise. As much as people give us a hard time, we, have been consistently in the top 25 for many, many years. Right now, we're ranked number 3 in the nation. And so, same with the Green Bay Packers, right? It's just a storied franchise. And so, when I think about what's the next brand, I'm always thinking about emerging, because I look at like a McDonald's or places like that. I think they're great, but at the same time, what's the opportunity to emerge with that brand, and how can I scale with the brand? So finding them early on enough where the risk is kind of still there, but it's mitigated, but it gives me an opportunity to have a runway. And so I'm always looking for those emerging brands and categories like pizza or dessert. So I'm kind of looking at it all that way. Like, it's kind of a whole process that I go through.
And do you draw any parallels from the experience you had, in commercial real estate, in professional sports, or in sports in general? Is there anything that you think, folks listening that are either athletes themselves or are invested in commercial real estate, that, tips you can share on, hey, it's similar in these ways, or these are differences that you need to look out for that you can draw from?
Yeah, I'm always telling people when they're looking at an investment, especially let's say franchising, Some franchises own their buildings, some lease their buildings, some do lease back, some do ground leases. Like there's a whole thought process there. And that's where I'm involved in multiple franchises. I'm just not operating them all. So like with Starbucks, I'm one of their investors who meets with the development team to know where they're headed, where they're going. So when people see me post a picture where I'm in a Starbucks with my thumb up saying we close today, they think I purchased the Starbucks. I partner with Starbucks on the real estate. They're going to run the franchise, but I'm going to own the real estate. So I'm a partner. So there's some people who like partner in that direction, like Absolute Triple Net, ground lease, right? They're still a part of franchising, really. They just own the real estate. They're not in the day-to-day. So that's a way to go about it. And then, some franchises let you be semi-absentee, where you can buy multiple locations, but you're not the owner-operator in the day-to-day. They let you have a general manager or an area manager. They let you build out a scalable team. Where some franchises, like Chick-fil-A, they want you in the store. And you got to come up through their system. You got to work in their system. You got to run a store first before they're willing to give you a store. So I would say that's more of the thought process I go about is what are the parallels on, like, am I the coach? Am I the player? Am I the offensive coordinator? Am I running the plays? Am I calling the plays? Am I building out the system? And I think that's something to really think through when we're looking at these opportunities. And then last thing is AUM is very important to me. And where it's headed, like where is it tracking? If I can look at data, okay, where's the AU been at consistently? Where is it scaling and growing? Because there will be ebbs and flows in every category. But like Raising Cane's, for instance, like you could get a franchise, 7-8 years ago at a really good price, but now you can't get your hands on one because not only have they scaled and done really well, they had a big PE firm buy into the venture. Same with Jersey Mike's. So you kind of find tipping points. And I know people who have Jersey Mike's who got it right. They got in right before the PE firm bought into it. And they've done really, really well. So.
Yeah, and some of these brands, like, Pop-Up Bagel is one of them right now, where they've sold 300 location to 15 franchisees. And they're only looking for very experienced multi-unit operators of 20, 30 plus locations. Todd Graves from Raising Cane's, I think he at one point too started buying all of his franchise locations back. And as far as I can tell, I think most of it's corporate owned again. And so once these brands, to your point, really take off, it's really hard to break into them. And the emerging ones are how you do that. It's like almost like startup investing or angel investing, where you got to pick the right one. It's de-risked a little bit, like you said, more than an angel investment, but you have to have a really good nose for, which brand has a good leadership team behind it, which brand has this kind of like viral, element to it or macro trend that's, following behind it. I think that's really, really good advice.
The other thing too is,
oh, go ahead.
Yeah, the other thing too, Alex, like if you're looking at a real estate deal, you can look at the demographics, you can look at the statistics, you can see what the IRR is and the returns are, right? That's more systematic. When you think about venture investing, and I've obviously invested in over 100 companies, people always ask me, like, why did you choose that company? How did you? And we know, less than 80% of the businesses make it in venture investing. So I always tell people the best way to get really good at betting in venture and betting in emerging anything is to really immerse yourself in the ecosystem. Like, go to the events, be on the calls, meet with any and everybody who's willing to meet with you, because that's just getting reps. It's like shooting a basketball or catching a football. The reason why I would get 200 balls off the jugs every day, where I was just catching off this jug. So when I got in front of 100,000 people and millions on TV, when the ball came my way, it was just a natural thing to react to it. So I would say getting as many reps as possible, because the word immersion isn't like I'm going to stick my toe in the pool. No, like I'm cannonballing into this thing. Like I'm going
deep end.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times with franchising and investing in general, people want the like easy, fast way to the money. And it's like, there's no quick get rich quick scheme. Like you got to do the work. You got to do the research. You got to put the money at risk. You got to be willing to make the mistakes to learn. Cause I always say it's not really a loss. It's just a lesson. It's only a loss if you quit. So there's a lot of talking to say there's like people want this secret sauce, and if we're all wired differently, like we have different risk adverse levels on what we want to invest in and how much money we're going to put at risk. And so I think that's where you just really got to get the reps the best way you can.
Yeah, I'm glad you say that. We say to our clients that we work with at Franzi all the time. It's like talking to a brand and learning about the process of buying a franchise, the overview call, the unit economics model call, brand validation where you talk to other franchisees. This doesn't cost you anything other than, and your time is valuable, but it doesn't cost you anything other than your time. And you've got to talk to a number of brands to get those reps in. It's like you said, it's like going to the gym or anything else. You're not going to know what you're doing or get good at what you're doing unless you start practicing it and doing it. And I also like that you said talking to mentors and people that have already done it, that are in the industry, that are in the field, that have that experience, because you get to basically borrow their brain. Like if there is a shortcut that exists, it's talking, and reaching out to people thoughtfully, because they might have 5, 10, 20 years of experience that you get to borrow some of that highlight reel from. You still got to go do the work yourself, but at least you can avoid some of those major missteps or miscalculations, or double down on the things that work just by a 30-minute conversation. You can learn a lot. I appreciate you sharing that. One thing I wanted to go back to is, you said your first kind of like immersion into franchising was this like GameStop business that didn't pan out. And so I think people love to hear stories of, failure as well, right? Like it maybe wasn't a full failure, it was a lesson, like you said, but what kept you coming back into franchising? Like, what was that lesson that you learned? Was it, hey, we picked the wrong brand or the wrong location, or we didn't know what we didn't know about operating? What were those things that you learned? And then what ultimately had you come back to franchising in general?
No, that's great. Because once that franchise went in that direction, me and my wife said, we're no longer ever, like franchising was a bad word in our house for a long time.
The F word.
Yeah, like we're not fucking saying that, forget my language, throw it off. Yep. So we really doubled down on our startup companies, and we said, which was 10 times riskier, but you're in your early 20s. I'm like, look, we want to be able to have 100% control, to be able to pivot, change, re-strategize, renegotiate, whatever. And so we just doubled down on our startups. But I will say this, my first startup, Team 5, never would have got to 1.5 billion in sales in 8 years without me having that loss at the franchise, because we were throwing mud on the wall. And what I would say, what we learned, the top 3 lessons, is there's a balance between being early and being too early in franchising. So really watching these concepts kind of validate their model and scale, where you're not in like the first couple hundred franchisees, because if so, it's going to be a rocky road, and I hope you make it out the backside. So that's the first thing, like you being too early in these new, because there's a new franchise model popping up every day, and they all look sexy on the outset, but like what's really gonna be validated over time? Has the market validated it? So that's where we said, hey, we don't want to be too late in our franchise, but if we're too early, then we have a lot more risk. So that's the first thing we learned. Second thing is really going deeper into the due diligence of what the franchise is going to provide to the franchisee, and not just talking to a couple of franchisees, but really doing more due diligence, talking to the ones that closed down, the ones that sold, and really just trying to have as many conversations as possible. And then I'll give you a nugget. I don't think I've ever talked to anybody about this online. Is if you're gonna franchise and you're a first-time franchisee, and this is worth his weight in gold. This is, if you didn't hear anything else I just said this whole podcast, this is the one. Go buy an existing franchise first. Do not open a new franchise developer. Like, don't go out and say, all right, love this franchise, I'm going to go start it from scratch, go do the lease, do the real estate, do the build out, take a black hole. Like, that is so risky, and it's so much more involved. I would encourage every first-time entrepreneur, first-time franchisee to buy an existing franchise. It's already making money. So when you close in 30 days and that payment is due, whether it's an SBA loan or however you financed it, there's a return in place to pay you back immediately. So that would be like the number one thing I would tell anybody franchising: get your hands on an existing franchise. Even if you know you want to go open 15 locations with this franchise, buy an existing one first and then do the new location.
I think that's good advice. Do you think that's true for home services or like non-retail businesses too? Like try to buy the existing window cleaning business or roofing business or whatever it may be.
All day. Because you already have clientele in place, you already have staff in place. There's already obviously systems from the franchise, but it should be systems from the franchisee. And then you can come in and clean up some things. Now, the negative on that is you may have some staff that, hey, we did it this way. So you have some staff
Yep.
pushback if you want to come in. But I'll take that any day over signing a franchise agreement and taking 18 months to open, right? Because now you got to go through this whole process of real estate, build out, negotiation, site approval. Like it's a whole nother like animal on that side. I'll take a couple of staff members that I gotta get, if you are out the door and new ones in the door before taking the risk of opening a brand new one. That's just my
Yeah, and getting the wrong site, you can't move that. Like once you build the location out, it's that's where you're at, and you got to be very confident about the ability to find the right site, the brand's ability to find the right site. Yeah, I think that's good advice, and at least with an existing business too, you can probably better identify the skeletons that are in the closet. Is this a viable business to run? Why are they selling it? There's usually this element of reading a person and establishing trust that exists there that I think is maybe easier to understand versus, like you said, a black box.
and sometimes
Um,
you can find some meat on the bone where you get them. Like I had a 3-unit opportunity in Houston that was like a smoothie king. And he was a guy from Dubai who was here in college and wanted to start some franchising. And just needed to move back. And he just was like, he could have sold them for like 1.5. He was trying to sell them for like 780 or 800K. It was a really good deal. The EBITDA multiple was there. The net income was there. The AUM was there, or AUV. Like it was all there. He just was trying to get out and get out of here. And so you can find opportunities like that. If you turn over enough rocks, they're out there.
yeah, yeah, that's true. That's what we're part of what we're trying to do too with Franz. Is like how do we make finding those opportunities easier, more accessible to find and the data behind them. One thing I wanted to ask you was, as you start to, you've now seen a number of different concepts. What are some of the main signals for you that you're like, this is a good brand? This is a good brand to get behind. Like, you've developed this picker now, right? Like where you've got a nose for it, you've got an eye for it. What are the top like 2 or 3 things that, you know, Terrence's checklist basically, like, does it have this? Does it have this? Does it have this?
Yeah, I like to see because man, now I'm looking at it from a different perspective. I'm not looking at it as how can I open new locations. I'm looking at it as how can I roll up and acquire a package of them. So I look at how many locations they have in the United States. Are they sold out? I look at how many are on the market for sale and why. I start really studying why these are for sale. If there's 1,500 locations, why are these 10 for sale? Why are there 100 for sale? If there's 100 out of 1,000, there's something going on. So I try to find the trends, and then I start tracking the average unit volume and then the net income. And does that net meet my criteria? Like if I'm going to pay this much, am I at 200,000 net per location, or am I at 25,000? And I started looking at that. And then the other thing I try to understand is this just a fad, or is this something that's a new category, like Crumbl, for instance? And how strong is the brand? Is it, what are they doing to put a moat around it? And like now at Crumbl, we're rolling out the dirty sodas, and that's been a really pop. Canada's taken off, and now we're rolling out dirty sodas in the United States at Crumbl. We started doing the minis. Those did really, really well. Like right now, I think we got the most viral week we've ever had with the Dubai turkey. Like
Yep.
they're sold out all across the United States. Like it's crazy. So like what's the machine behind helping grow the brand? And the one thing I love about Crumbl is that no one has their own social media. I've always thought that was fragmented, where you have these franchises where each franchisee can have their own social media. So you got all these different messages going out versus Crumbl's like, no, we got one TikTok, one Instagram, one Facebook, one X or whatever, and we send it all out for you guys. So I'll try a little different data points. And then are there enough opportunities for me to buy an existing with upside? So
I like that too about Crumbl is like, because before this, I started a franchisor in the laundromat space, and we went back and forth on do the individuals have their own franchise, Instagram, TikTok accounts, or should we do it? And I think, yeah, in the long run, it's better to keep that central and you let the brand be really good at creating that cult-like following, the viral following. And Crumbl's done a master class, of a job at doing it.
yeah, animals.
All
Well,
right, so you're looking for, oh yeah, so you're looking for AUVs, you're looking for, why are people selling? You're looking for, what kind of support and, whether it's marketing or, kind of virality behind the brand is there. I want to go back to, your first few brands again, or your first time doing this, because I think some people listening to the show, they might be doing this for their first time, they might be scaling multi-unit, doing this for their 30th time, but for those that are, just getting into it, walk me back into you and your wife are in your early 20s, you buy this business, you sign this first agreement. What was it like those first few weeks after, like, shit, now we're franchisees, we own this business. What was that like? What was that process like?
I think for anybody who decides to venture into entrepreneurship, whether it's in startups, whether it's in M&A, whether it's in franchising, it's exciting because it's like birthing a child. Like it's an idea that you have and it's a vision that you want to pursue. A lot of times people are pursuing it to get away from a W-2 job, and it's risky, but you will never achieve anything great without taking risks.
Mm-hmm.
It's that simple. It's not possible. You can't stay on the porch and be great. Like, you got to get off the porch. My mom always said, you got to get off the porch with the puppies. So she would always push me to go and take risk and, have faith in myself. So it was an exciting time. And once you sign that document, it's like, all right, we had been meeting with a lot of other franchisees. That's back when I was looking at Chick-fil-A and Scooter's Coffee House and the most random stuff in the world. But then, like I said, the biggest takeaway is just, we didn't make a dime for like the next 6 to 8 months because we were in development and getting sites approved and financing and getting inventory and doing, finding a general contractor to do the build out and getting all that approved and then going through the training process to be approved as new franchisees. So I just think it's the same thing I tell people who want to get into real estate. They see me developing neighborhoods. I partner with Jack Nicklaus's like golf course community on some certain things. The traditions here in Bryan College Station. I develop student housing, and they see these projects coming to life and they think it's so cool. But I tell them if I could do it all over again, I just would have been buying existing real estate in the beginning, because once again, it's a lot. Like, I may get a piece of dirt and not make a dime on it for 3 years. And that just to me makes no sense. Now, at this point in my career, I do it because that's where I cut my teeth. But when I think about franchising, the number one lesson I go back to is buying existing franchises is the way to go.
Yeah. Was there a moment for you early on in the franchise, when you're on the franchise journey, that you guys doubted yourself and were like, why did we do this? Why did we stick to, real estate or, do something else? Was there a moment where you really questioned and doubted your guys' decision, and how did you overcome it?
All the time. I mean, I'm working on a sports fund right now to go around and raise $250 million, and I'm doubting myself right now. I always tell people the hill just gets larger, but there always will be a hill that you got to climb mentally, spiritually, and even sometimes physical. And so it doesn't mean, because I think a lot of times, and I fall in this trap, but that's where being an athlete is a reminder. Like, I remember we beat Oklahoma. They were #1 team in the nation at Kyle Field. They were supposedly the greatest college football team in the history of college sports. And they came in and we beat them at Texas A&M. I had 2 touchdowns. I was a sophomore. It was one of the coolest games ever. And I remember thinking, like, I've achieved this, and like, but then tomorrow we get in the film room and coach is like, why did you run that route wrong? And it's like, you, you don't even get
Got to work.
yeah, you're right back to it. And so that's how it is in life. You go achieve something that is monumental for you and your legacy and your lineage and your family tree. But in a week, it's like, all right, now what's the next hill we got to take? So as I encourage people who have those doubts aren't going to go away. That's just being a human being. And where you gain confidence is, I always say, competence creates confidence. Mm-hmm. So I try to study, have as many calls as I can, do the research. Now we have AI, we have, the stuff that can just build a whole balance sheet, build a whole spreadsheet, build a whole pro forma in 30 seconds, literally. So that cuts out a lot of the risk, because we used to have to build a lot of that stuff ourselves. But even then, having the tools, you still are going to doubt yourself. But just remember, like, I can stay in doubt and be 80 years old and be looking back like, why didn't I do that? I'd much rather have the doubt of saying, why did we invest in that and lose time and energy and money? Then why didn't we do it at all? Yeah. So that's just me. Like, I'm swinging for the fences.
I think you kind of answered this question, but I agree with you. Like, I feel the same way. Like, I'll accomplish something, and then it's like, what's the next wall? What's the next hill to take? And I've debated with a number of people, I've talked to a number of people about this. Do you think people are just wired that way, or do you think that can be developed?
No, I think you're wired that way. I always say, because like we all have our gifts. If everybody was meant to be an entrepreneur, then who would work? Like, or like staff and administration and you see what I'm saying? Like, if we're all out here trying to start startups and we're all trying to grow these businesses, then who's going to help service the businesses? Who's going to do that? So I think we're all wired differently to play our roles. And to me, none is better than the other. It's like, no one can say I'm not a great football player because I can't be an offensive lineman. I'm not 6'6", 330 pounds. It's just, no matter how much I try to learn to be an offensive lineman, it's just not in my cards. So I tell people all the time, like, when it comes to franchising, entrepreneurship, or sales, or investing, like, Tiger Woods is a really good thing. I teach my sales team. I have, like 300 agents that I coach that work for me at eXp Realty. And I tell them all the time, there was this interview that Tiger Woods did, and it was life-changing for me. But this was when Tiger was just dominating golf, like just the face of it, just dominating it. And they had an interview and they asked him, they said, Tiger, when you practice, we want to just think about, like, Tiger Woods, the most amazing golfer of all time. Like, what do you focus on? And he said, what do you mean? They said, well, what do you practice? Like, what do you do? He said, I hit my driver. And they were perplexed. It was like, well, why would you hit your driver? You hit the driver the furthest in the history of golf at the time. You hit the most fairways, highest percentage of fairways hit, the longest drive average. Like, why would you hit your driver? And he said, because I double down on what I'm good at. And it's like, so now I tell my team all the time, double down on your driver. And so when I think about people who want to do different things in entrepreneurship or whatever, like, find things that you're naturally attracted to and that you have a skill set for, and double down on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. I think about this too, especially with athletics. And I think something you said earlier about, competence develops confidence. I do think there's some element that, not everyone's going to be born a LeBron James in business. Like LeBron has the right genetics, the right kind of innate skill and talent, but he also worked his ass off. And I think there's an element of, whether it's professional sports or business, I think there's this other group or cohort of people that might not have as much of that inherent skill, but if the work ethic is there and the ability to put their reps in and become, the competency develops, I think that confidence comes that allows you to also just get better and better and better and better, hit that next ceiling and hit that next hill. So I agree with you. I think a lot of it is just kind of how we're wired, but I think there is this ability to gain that confidence as long as you're willing to put yourself out there, take the risk, surround yourself with mentors and get those reps in. That can get you there. You might not be all the way to LeBron status, but at least you're in the game versus never being in it at all.
No, I agree with you. So we're saying the same thing with one small pivot. whether you have the skill set or not, you can outwork anybody and you can go achieve whatever you want to achieve. But I think we all have our own limitations in a
Yeah.
sense. Like, even though I may, at this point, people see me as this athlete and who's now this entrepreneur, I was the transaction coordinator in the beginning of our businesses, but I'm absolutely terrible at being a transaction coordinator. So quicker that I can get the business to a place to where I can go sit in a seat, I call it my time best spent, and then give that seat up. That's kind of more what I was saying. Like, everybody can go and grow and scale businesses, and you can go and compete with anybody. Business is warfare. Everybody can compete. But once again, like, naturally, as much as I want to be a long range shooter, like, whether it's on the video game or in real life, so impatient. I don't want to sit there for 30 minutes and shoot one bullet. But naturally, I'm, 6'2", 200 and some pounds. I can run. I'm athletic. I'm a tactical person. So I'm better at moving around than being a sniper. You know what I mean? Like, can I be a
Yeah.
sniper? I can shoot long range. I love shooting long range. But man, it's just not my time best.
Natural drive. It's not your driver.
Yes. Now I'm doubling down on my driver.
I love that. All right, I want to ask you a couple questions about like the day-to-day operations, because you've built these massive companies across different industries, categories, et cetera. You're what the franchise industry calls a mumbo as well, a multi-unit, multi-brand operator. What is your day-to-day involvement in the franchise operation look like? I mean, do you got a whole team and GMs and directors of operation, and you're just kind of looking at, numbers, or are you going around looking at new sites or new, existing units to buy? What does that involvement look like with the franchise system and portfolio you've built?
Yeah, it's really cool because none of my weeks look the same. I've tried to create similarities and consistency. But you're always having to put out fires and take care of customers, and like the Dubai Brownie, right? Like, we rolled out this Dubai Brownie at Crumbl. We bought all this inventory. We've coached, we've prepped, we've watched the training videos. We were ready, and 2 days in, we sold out. Yeah. It's like, I'm literally in College Station having to drive all around Texas to get this specific chocolate so that we can keep going. And that's just like something I didn't wake up that morning anticipating driving around. It's 3-4 hours this way, 3-4 hours that way, in order to make sure that my stores had the inventory they needed. So yeah, I have general managers, yeah, but they got to be in the store right now, and I'm going and getting the material or inventory and chocolate or whatever. So that's just an example of, I have a set kind of schedule that I focus on, but I tell my team all the time, if you need me to shovel poop, I'll go shovel poop. Whatever you need me to do, willing and ready to do it. And I think that's where our staff from the top to the bottom work really, really hard, because I tell them all the time, like, I will be loyal to you. I will train you. I will coach you. I will help pay for you to get more certifications. I've even helped other people get licensed in other areas. I've helped people start businesses that have worked for me, but I just need you to work hard, and I need you to always shoot me straight. And so I had this core value set that we go by. It's called EPIGH, EPIGH. So excellence, passion, integrity, growth, and hard work. And then below those 5 kind of core values, we have 5 pillars, which I won't go over today, but I'm like, just embody these things at the best of your ability, and let's be great. But so I kind of shift, like, I may be in Crumbl stores for like the next 30 days, 3 or 4 days a week. Then I may be, with my construction company in the field for the next couple of weeks. So I kind of bounce around the different ventures. Now with COVID, it really freed me up to scale on a lot of things because I could do a lot of virtual meetings.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's really, really good advice. And I like how you structure, kind of some of those core principles and philosophies so that, the team that you've built is rallied around it. I think in that same vein, I mean, you've built teams across construction, agents, franchise staff. I mean, very different types of, roles, if you think about it. Do you have like a leadership or hiring principle that applies universally across all those different types of, individuals? Is it EPIGH, EPIGH, and that is the principle? Or is there anything else that you have that you'd recommend from a leadership or hiring perspective?
Yeah, EOS, Entrepreneur Operating System. Gino Wickman. I read Traction in 2014, um, or around 2014, 15. No, it might have been a little later. I'm sorry, 2018. I apologize. 2018, I read the book Traction by Gino Wickman, and it changed my life. I literally read it in like 3 days. We were on our anniversary in Mexico, and I read it in like 3 days, and I was like, when we get back, like, this is it. And so I put everybody on that system. It's an entrepreneurial, it's called EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. And there's a book called Rocket Fuel that he wrote. There's one that's about integrators and visionaries. I'm a visionary, and so I'm always looking for integrators who can help me go out and integrate and apply my ideas. And yeah, so that book was life-changing. So we do level 10s. We have the IDS, identify, discuss, and solve, like all of those. Because I always say, like, a slant route for the Green Bay Packers is a different route for the Cowboys. So are we calling and saying the same plays and the same jargon? So I'm always trying to get anybody that works in my companies to be on the same kind of jargon and playbook system.
I like that.
Now I'm not jumping. I'm sorry, Alex. So now I'm not jumping from, oh, I'm in construction and we say this over here, and now over here at this franchise we say it here, and then like everybody's saying the same jargon within our core businesses.
It's got to make it simpler too, right? Because if you're doing all these different cultures by different business and vertical, it's just like it's too much to get everyone rallied behind, and it kind of makes it more of this cohesive system and an enterprise. I really like that. I'm sure it's hard to pull off, but the more you can simplify, I'm sure the easier it is for everyone involved.
It's taking some time, but yeah.
I bet. It's 20 years.
Yeah. I can run any of my companies off of one piece of paper, which sounds crazy.
That is crazy. That's awesome, though.
When I read that in Gino Wickman, I was like, how? Because at that time, we had all these policy manuals and procedure manuals. I'm like, how the hell are you running a company off one piece of paper? But we have a Google Slides where each one of our ventures, we have the whole company procedures and manuals and everything on one page. It's pretty cool. It's called a roadmap.
I love that. Well, last couple of questions here. I want to be cognizant of your time. I want to get into like one or two questions just about kind of your reflections, advice on everything you've learned over the years. Starting with a question around, I think, people's initial perspective of franchising. I think a lot of people think McDonald's or Subway or oh, it's you're buying a job or a business in a box. What do you think people get wrong about franchising and what it actually takes, to succeed and to get into it?
That's a really good question. I would say, and this is my opinion, is there's a lot of things that are just statistical data that you can't overcome, right? Like, there's so many startups that are going to fail. There's so many franchisees that are going to fail. 50% of real estate agents don't make it out of year one. 50% don't make it out of year two. So I always tell my staff, go find those statistics and know them at heart. And let's figure out how we're not that. So like one of the things was, and I'm just using real estate for an example, 87% of agents don't contact their clients after their first transaction. So let's say I buy a house, you buy it, and then I never follow up with you ever. Well, if I want to be in the top 10% of real estate brokers, all I got to do is just follow up with Alex 3 times after he buys his first house from me. Well, what does that do, right? Statistically, that puts me in a better position to not be out of the business after year one, right? Just because I found a statistic that I can just say, just do this activity and do it consistently, and then that helps me succeed. And so when I look at different ventures, I'm looking for those data points that puts us in a position to be successful. So I'm not just saying, Alex, you need to contact your past clients. I'm giving you the why behind it. And that really helped us.
I like that. And then for athletes, investors, corporate escapees, anyone that's, exploring diversifying away from what, industry they're already in or job they're already in, why do you think franchising is such an effective vehicle to do that?
I think franchising with the due diligence, with the right model, with the right location, with the right team in place, I think it's a really, it ensures higher level and higher rates of success. Now, like I said, They need to make sure they're in the right model and all the stuff we talked about earlier. But I think franchising is just a great way to become an entrepreneur without trying to do it from scratch. Like startups are 10 times harder. And everybody, like I said, there's a lot more to it than people think. And so I think franchising is a great first step into becoming an entrepreneur.
Yeah. I agree with that. Like, I meet a lot of people that will ask me, like, Alex, you raised this much money and you've scaled this business to this much revenue and you started it from nothing. It's, I'm inspired by your story. Like, how do I go do that? I'm like, I don't know if that's the right question. I think you got to ask, like, what's the right thing for you to go do? Like, everyone's risk tolerance is different. Their operational experience is different. But if the goal is ultimately to build wealth and you're willing to, still put that hard work in, I think franchising is one of the best paths to do that. Because to your point, you've got the playbooks, you've got brand, kind of credibility, and Crumbl doing the research on the Dubai brownie and concepting. Like, you don't have to be an expert in the kitchen. You got to be good at operating a business, but you get this kind of cheat code in a way of like all this support and resources. And if you're having a bad week, as well, especially for those that are early on and might not have as much of a, as large of a portfolio as you, where they're like, oh my gosh, everything's riding on these 2 locations. And you inevitably have those weekends where you're like, why did I do this? I want to quit. I want to sell. You've got a group of peers that you can reach out to that have probably thought and have felt the same thing at some point that will talk you back off that ledge and be like, Terrence, you got it, man. Just power through. You got to stay in the game, stay around the hoop. And that's a lot different than doing it alone, in a big way. All right, last question for you. If someone's listening and they're, on the fence about jumping into the game, buying a business, buying a franchise, what's your advice for them as they look at that first opportunity and doing it the right way?
Well, I'm a believer, so I'm always going to go this direction. I'm not the one that preaches at people at all. I believe we all have the freedom to think about, our spiritual life how we want. But at the same time, I try to pray about everything first. And if you have a spouse, really make sure you're on the same page, because I have seen statistics around entrepreneurship, startups, and franchising. And when the husband and wife aren't on the same page, it creates a lot of turmoil at home. And I believe that if you don't have a safe haven at home, it's tough to be successful in the world. Not that you have to be perfect. None of us are. But I think if the business creates that crux between you and your spouse, that's tough. So I would say pray first. Make sure you and your spouse are on the same page. If you're married, on which one you want to invest in and why you should invest and why does it make sense. And like, I include my wife in everything. So I never have to fill her in on anything. Like, any business trip I go on, she goes. Most of the time I have these meetings. By the time I get serious about something, I'm like, hey, check that out. I send her an email. Let's talk about it. So I'm not having to catch her up. She's my business partner. She's like my life partner, my wife, the mother of my 3 beautiful babies, but she's also my business partner. And if someone's your partner, you don't just tell them this is what we're doing, because that's just going to be out of balance. And I've seen that happen a lot. Because remember, I'm looking at hundreds of deals a week, and I'm looking at other founders and investing. And I always ask them about that. Like, are you and your wife or are you and your husband on the same page? Well, he doesn't agree with what I'm doing, but I'm doing it anyway. Well, I'm probably not going to need the company, because I know it's going to come back and bite you. So final thought is pray about it, get on the same page with your spouse, and then just make sure you're not stuck in that analysis by paralysis. Like, if after 16 months, 18 months, 22 months, you still haven't pulled the trigger, you got to really decide, is this what you really want to do? And then just take the leap. You're never going to learn sitting on the bench. You got to get in the game.
Yep. Yeah. So it's like, get good with the one who runs the universe first, and then get good with the one who runs the world. Your women or your spouse, and go from there.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a really unique and good, I think, piece of advice. A lot of franchisors will actually require you to bring your spouse along, whether it's, you're the husband bringing your wife in or the wife bringing the husband in. Like, they've realized, the smart franchisors realize this is a team game. And if you're going to go do this and bet, some of your family's savings and, assets on doing this, they got to get the whole family involved. And they almost require that you bring the spouse into the process, as they're evaluating whether you'd be a good franchisee or not. So great advice. Terrence, again, thank you so much for taking the time. I mean, incredible backstory from athletics to now building these business empires. I appreciate you sharing your knowledge, sharing your experience and your advice with our audience. And if there's ever anything that I can do to return the favor, let me know. But otherwise, where can people follow you or, connect with you?
Yeah, I would just say, Alex, as you look at opportunities of emerging franchise opportunities or opportunities to acquire multi locations, because that's your world, any investment opportunities that come across your plate, send them to me. I look at everything, especially if it's in Texas. Anything in Texas, I'm your guy. So,
All right. If anyone listening is from Texas and they've got opportunities too, like you heard Terrence, reach out to him. He's always willing to take a look.
I look at startups, I look at existing franchises, I look at mature businesses, I buy businesses on EBITDA multiples. So if it's in Texas and there's an opportunity to invest in it, acquire it, or be a part of it, I'm your guy. But yeah, how you can find me is just terrencemurphy.com, TerrenceMurphy.com. I just got back on Instagram. It's just Terrence C. Murphy. And then I'm on LinkedIn. Those are really the places I'm active. My website, my Instagram, and then my LinkedIn profile. So if you need me, give me a shout, brother.
Awesome. I appreciate it again, Terrence. Thanks for coming on.
Proud of you, bro. Let's stay in touch. Talk to you soon.